Hello YouTube, this is Green. Hello YouTube, Chris here from Alamo Music Center in San Antonio, Texas, where surprisingly enough, it's Taco Tuesday again. Super excited about that. But we're even more excited about these two keyboards, synthesizers, that we want to talk about today. Really, it's only one keyboard and a module. The point of this is you can get a lot of synth for under $400. So today we're going to cover the MicroKORG, which is still being manufactured by Korg today, some 17 years later. There's good reason for that. It's super powerful. And then Behringer's Model D, which is modeled after a Model D monophonic synthesizer. Different, but both incredibly powerful, and we want to talk about the features and listen to them today as well. Really, really cool synthesizers. So without further ado, let's start talking about the MicroKORG and the Model D, and we will actually begin with the Model D. All right, so we're going to start off with Behringer's Model D. As you can see here, I have the MicroKORG as well. The MicroKORG is actually just spitting MIDI into the Model D via the standard 5-pin MIDI DIN connector, 5-pin DIN. This also transmits and receives MIDI over USB, but before we jump into any of that business, let's talk about what this actually is. And the Model D is a faithful recreation of a very popular synthesizer, which is also referred to as the Model D. It's an analog circuit. They stayed true to that original design. The layout is almost exactly the same. There's a few more bells and whistles that come with this version, but you have the standard 3 oscillator with your pink and white noise for your sound sources. You have your glide or your portamento. You have your master tune for your first oscillator, pardon me. You have modulation, LFO, happening here as well, and you can actually route those to other sources or other destinations, excuse me. So we have our oscillator section. We have our 3 oscillators right here. We can actually adjust the octave that they're sitting at. You have the range knob, which you can see here. I'm going to go ahead and play A and let you hear what it does. And we can change the range for each oscillator as well as the waveform. The waveforms that we have are going to be triangle, then a triangle saw, then we move up here, then we have a standard sawtooth, then we have a square wave, then we have 2 different pulses, a narrow and a wide pulse. So I'm going to switch between those real fast as well. So let's start there. That's our triangle. Triangle saw, sawtooth, square, pulse wide, and pulse narrow. Now once again we have 2 more oscillators, so we can actually blend these together to get bigger sounds, richer timbres. I'll demonstrate real fast. So let's go ahead and bring in oscillator 2. Let's go to a lower range. Let's bring in our sawtooth. And then I'm going to go ahead and turn on oscillator 2 right here in the mixer section. So I'm going to bring the volume up. I'm going to bring the volume up slowly. So now you can actually hear it it's oscillating itself. Basically what you're hearing is they're slightly out of tune. So you're getting this kind of filter pulse width modulation that's happening. Can you hear that? It's pretty cool. Now I can change the pitch of the oscillator too, so we can create chords, if you will. Pretty cool, and I can change the waveforms individually and the octave that they're sitting at. And let's bring it back to where they're actually sitting at the same pitch or close. Pretty cool, right? We still have a third oscillator that we can bring into the mix. Now, as you can hear, it's kind of out of tune. We can fix that. So now with oscillator 3, I actually have it set to the triangle, which gives it a more of a rotund or round sound down there with our low end. So now we have all three oscillators in the mix, and we can actually blend those right here if we go to the mixer section. So right now we're just hearing oscillator 1. I'm going to bring in 2. And then I'll bring in 3. And you can actually kind of hear it beating a little bit because it's slightly out of tune. Not much. Can you feel it? Whoa, whoa. It's really, really cool. And then you start creating all your bass lines and all kinds of other things. But it's not just for that, you can also have soaring leads and whatnot. If we come over here to the filter section, this is when things can even become more interesting, because now we start playing with all the different harmonics that make up these different waveforms. So right now I have the cutoff frequency turned all the way up, okay? As I bring it down, you're gonna notice that it's gonna become less resonant, it's gonna become a little darker. Pretty cool, right? But we can give it even more flavor by turning up the filter emphasis. Now, just from turning that up, it thinned it out a little bit. But listen to what happens as I start to bring the cutoff back. And we can manipulate that more. Right now, the emphasis is at about 50%. Let's bring it all the way up. It's a pretty awesome filter. And that filter has been heard on millions of recordings. It's a 24 dB ladder filter. It's an incredible circuit. Now we can even emphasize it and change the way the filter feels a bit more by adjusting the contour. So there's really no no limit to how much sculpting you can do on this. It's really, really just tons of fun. So now we've looked at the oscillators, the mixer, the filters, and we haven't really touched everything yet. We're not going to today. As you can see here, we've got a bunch of inputs and outputs that we can utilize as well. Basically, this is a semi or quasi-modular synthesizer where the original version of this was not so much like that. This is going to play well with your other modular units that you have if you are already in that Eurorack stage, or if you're a fan of modular synthesis. This also, the form factor also conforms to that, so you can actually slide this into a Eurorack case as well. But let's move away from that just for a second, and let's talk about a couple of other features that are over here to the left of the oscillator bank, and that one of those is glide, and I mentioned that briefly. Glide is also called portamento, and here's what it does. Now I'm going to turn it all the way up. THX, the audience is listening, or whatever, right? I think they used a DX7 for that. I could be wrong. Maybe it's a Prophet 5. Who knows? Anyhow, that's what glide does. It allows the notes to glide into each other. Think of it as like glissando if you're a string player, right? Let's bring that back down, and let's talk about the LFO and the mod mix. Now right now, the LFO is turned all the way down, the mod mix is turned all the way up, but I'm going to start to bring the mod depth up. Now you can hear it detuning. I'm going to turn the LFO rate up. Pretty cool, huh? So the LFO, which stands for low frequency oscillator, is modulating the oscillators, right? It's modulating the pitch. The thing that's really cool about this one is we can turn the rate up so high that we start to get into basically like an FM synthesis type of mode, frequency modulation, where the LFO becomes so high that it starts to resonate, or it starts to oscillate at an audible frequency. Pretty powerful for us sound designers. I'm going to bring those back down. Actually, before we walk away from the LFO, I can also switch it to a square wave. Tons of fun. Now we actually skipped another circuit over here in the mixer, and that would be our, and I mentioned it, we have our white noise and pink noise circuit. Okay, so right now it's turned on, but I have the volume all the way down, so I'm going to incorporate it into what we have happening with our three oscillators right now. So that's our white noise generator, and then we have pink noise. Let's turn off the other oscillators. So white, pink. Cool? We can use white noise to create wind effects, percussion, snare drums, and so on and so forth. Or pink noise. As you can tell, white noise and pink noise are pretty different from each other. And it has to do with how the frequencies are being combined and played back. White noise is just a combination of every frequency being played back at random. Pink noise is basically the same thing, but it conforms more to the Fletcher-Munson curve in how we actually hear. So it becomes a little bit darker. So we've turned off our white noise or our noise generator, and we have our oscillators back on. I want to look at a couple more things really quickly. Again, we're not going to cover everything on here because we could talk about this all day and have so much fun, but I'm getting into the guts of it right now. But let's talk about we've already talked about the filter. Let's talk about the envelope generator for the filter, and let's talk about the envelope generator for the oscillator. Okay, so real quick, let's do the oscillator first, right? So we're going to manipulate the attack, decay, and sustain of this very simple patch that we've created, okay? So I'm going to turn the attack up first. And you can hear as I turn the attack up, the note, it kind of swells in. Pretty cool, yeah? Let's bring it back down. As you can see, my sustain right now, it's about 60%. Let's turn it all the way down. So now it's very, very percussive because it's not sustaining anymore. You can hear it sustaining, but it's really faint. As I bring the sustain up, you can hear the note sustaining a little better. Okay, let's bring it back down and talk about decay. So as you can see, we have a very as you can hear, excuse me, we have a very fast attack and a short decay. Let's turn the decay up. So what is the decay? The decay is how long it takes for the note to fade out after it reaches its peak amplitude. Let's bring the attack up. A little more. Let's bring the decay up. And let's bring our sustain up a little bit. Cool? So what we're doing here is we're manipulating the amplitude envelope of our oscillators. Now what happens if we bring the amplitude envelope or the envelope generator, if we manipulate that for our filter? You can actually hear the filter opening up and closing back up. Pretty cool. So there's so many things we can do. And with all these patch points, we can actually send information out that we're controlling here to our modular rack. So if we want to send out LFO information, if we want to send out gate information, which is going to basically open and close certain circuits, we can spit all that out to other devices. This is super powerful. It's really, really cool. And with all the MIDI implementation and other things that have been included that didn't exist on the original version, it makes it a little more powerful, honestly. Is the original version awesome? Absolutely. It's such a cool synth. But this, you can own 10 of these for what the original costs. It's the exact same circuit, and you can actually chain these together via MIDI. It's called polychaining, so you can actually have a polyphonic Model D where it's going to play notes in the chord, up to 16 channels of MIDI. Chain 16 of them, you can play 16 notes deep. Really, really super cool. This thing is amazing. I can't say enough about it. I love it. Cool? So that's a quick overview of the Model D. Now we'll move down to the MicroKORG. All right, so we're vocoding some Taco Tuesday action on the Korg MicroKORG. This thing has been around for 17 years, and for good reason. It's super powerful. I know you're seeing mini keys, tiny package. You can manipulate every aspect of the synthesizer. It is so killer. $399.99 is the price. If you have the editing software for Mac or Windows, it takes this device into an entirely different universe. You're no longer bound to the controls and the LED display. You can do everything on the computer, spit the information into the MicroKORG via MIDI, and you can hear your creations instantly. It's so much fun. So let's talk about it a little bit more here. Let's get into some of the features and how it's laid out. As you can see, we have 3 mini keys, pitch bend modulation. We have program number select. This dial right here is going to basically choose different banks for you. So we have trance, techno, house, electronica, drum and bass, breaks, hip hop, vintage, retro, SE hit, and the vocoder, which we have already heard. It has an arpeggiator, volume, octave shift up and down, and then these knobs right here are going to allow you to choose different parameters that you can edit. You can edit with these knobs, and then these are the different parameters. And as you can see the way it's laid out, these parameters that are underneath are associated with these knobs. Cool? Pretty easy to get around on. So we'll start with A11, and it's going to be a trance patch. So kind of standard, but we can change the way it sounds by manipulating different parameters using our mod wheel and our pitch bend. If we go over here to these potentiometers, we have cutoff, resonance, envelope generator attack, envelope generator release. So again, ADSR, kind of like what we had here on the Model D. And in the tempo, we can manipulate these parameters really quickly. Pretty basic patch. And as we move around, the program numbers. And so you can hear it's already arpeggiating. So if we go to some of the other banks, you can actually hear a formant filter there on that. And right there you have an instant beat in the box. And as I manipulate the cutoff and resonance, you start getting some of that squelchy 303 type of sound that Roland was always very famous for, and still are, actually. It's a coveted sound in the electronic music world. But we can get really, really deep into this thing. So you have mono patches, you have patches that have polyphony to them so you can play chords. Rhodes patches, you name it, it does so much. So we can manipulate all the sounds over here using these knobs and these parameters down below. The knobs line up with the parameters, and then we choose the different parameters over here with Edit Select 1 and Edit Select 2. We're not going to get into all this because, as you can see, there's a ton of different things we can do, but you have to trust me when I say that you can manipulate every single parameter that's associated with the sounds, and you can create your own sounds from scratch as well. It's really easy and it's a lot of fun, especially if you have the editor. So with our program select, once again, we have these different banks: trance, techno house, electronica, drum and bass, hip hop, vintage, retro, SE, hit, sound effects hit. And these are really a lot of fun, especially if you're doing any sort of post work at home. You know, you can think about this not just as a musical device, but also something for the creation of sound design, and maybe if you're posting your own films. Going back to some old school techno right there. So cool, so much to do. Now here where it says side A and side B, these 8 buttons actually get doubled up. So for each bank, you actually have 16 different programs or patches. Lots of fun. I need to have another one of these. I don't own one anymore, and I think I need to own one again. I'm going to buy another one. Why do we sell things as musicians? Because we're silly. Probably because we spent our money poorly. I need to have one of these again. Okay, so we're going to stop here with the MicroKORG because I can't dive into every single parameter in every single patch. But as you can see, it's super powerful. Transmits MIDI in, out, and through. The MIDI, once again, is coming, or the MIDI out is feeding our Model D. Now we're hearing both of those. This will also transmit MIDI information from the controllers as well, these encoders. So if you're working in the box and you have a DAW, like Ableton or Pro Tools, and you have other software instruments that you're using from Arturia or whatever's included with those packages, you can assign these encoders to different parameters within your DAW. You can automate using tactile controls, which is really, really nice, as opposed to using a mouse or drawing stuff in. It's more fun when you're hands-on. All right, so thanks for tuning in today. We hope you enjoyed our little overview of the MicroKORG and Behringer's Model D. Both of these together can be purchased for under $750. That is a lot of power coming out of both of these machines. As you can see from the demos that we just had, you can really, really program this super, I mean, you can get super deep. And this right here is just hours of lead and bass fun, and you can prog out and do whatever you want. I mean, the sound of the Model D it's legendary. It's been around for decades at this point, and there's good reason for that, as you can hear from the demos. So again, thanks for tuning in. I'm Chris with Alamo Music Center here in San Antonio. If you haven't subscribed to our channel, please do that below. Please leave any comments that you have about these devices or just anything in general. Life, tacos, if you had good tacos on this Taco Tuesday. And that's it. We'll see you next time. Have a great weekend.